Now, Stephen Doyle popped out to Croke Park yesterday for the launch of the Allianz Football Leagues. He caught up with the Monaghan star Ryan Wylie and the Kerry forward Stephen O'Brien to get their thoughts on the experimental GAA rules that are being voted on this Saturday. Have a look.
Do you think the new rules are going to survive into the league?
Yeah, I'm not sure. No, I didn't talk to a few lads there. No, it'd be 5 years of him. Like, I didn't realise that like whatever rules implemented is in there for 5 years. So, most of the rules are good. Now, in fairness, I'm not really sure about some of the hand pass rules. It's just going to be so difficult for referees to referee when they're trying to. You're trying to count the steps of the player. You can count, has he hopped it twice? You're trying to look inside to the inside forward, see if there's any drag in. Then you might miss a hand pass there. So, and like, I'm not sure it's going to stop a good few attacking moves as well. So, no, it's like we're going to try to kick as much as we can anyway. We don't need the rule to tell us that. But yeah, I'd rather that rule. But like the simple rule would be brilliant. Stop kind of fouls at the end of the towards the end of the game would be excellent, and it won't punish the player that does get a black card too much as well. I got one early against Munster final versus a silly tackle off from a short kick out, and then that was my day done. Like, so there's a long, so maybe it'll hurt the team that you got on to 14, but the player at least maybe can come back on. So that's important.
Just to ask you finally then, if there was one rule you could bring in yourself, what would it be to help maybe improve the game?
I think the game is in good health as it is. Like, obviously you want to tweak it the whole time, but like we're talking there, I don't have to put too much thought of it. Like, basketball now probably, like, they made the rules like the shot clock, even something like that. Yeah. If you had a minute for an attack, maybe that stops the kind of possession at the end of the I suppose that was what the hand pass rule was trying to look at. So maybe if you had a set time per attack and there was a shot clock or whatever, you had to work attack. Yeah. Or like they have the half court press as well. I'm not sure how is that feasible, but something like that maybe. That will stop a team kind of just killing the game at the end by just with sterile kind of possession. But at the end of the day, it's that team's right. It's their right because they're winning the game. They can do whatever they want. It's important to go into the game, or if you go into that period with the lead, you're going to try to protect it. So maybe that would be something to be thought of. I don't know.
And I imagine a lot of the training this year has been based around the fact that the new rules have come in. And has that made training a little bit harder?
It's probably just different, trying to get used to them, and with the past, there's different rules. There's 5 new rules there to get used to, but just within training and stuff, maybe it's helping us kick in the marks and helping us our first touch and stuff. But it'll be interesting to see what happens now this weekend, whether they're gonna come in or not. But we haven't been ignorant to the fact and completely not used to rules, so we're training away with them, and hopefully it'll improve us.
Do you think the rules will survive into the league? What's your kind of feeling on it now?
To be honest, I don't know what way the delegate's going to go, but I only found out, I didn't realise that if they come in, they're only in for league and then not in for championship. So I find that a bit bizarre, that if you're doing so much in the league and then they're going to be scrapped then for the championship and back. I think that's probably the weirdest thing of them all, but I think it's very tough on referees, and it's going to leave it tough again and for the club referees. They're doing an unreal job at the minute, and they don't probably get enough praise for it, and they have a tough enough job with it. They have so much to be taken care of, never mind counting now hand passes and marks and stuff, and was it 20 metres and stuff like this. So I think it'd be hard for them to come in, but I don't know what way people are going to vote.
Yeah. Do you think they should come in, or is there any of the rules that you would look at and say, look, we need to scrap that and just maybe think of something different?
Sin bin is probably the best rule. That your game's not finished if you get a black card, but it puts your team under a lot of pressure, which is still given. You're sacrificing, or you're leaving your team with less players, which is obviously going to the other team's advantage. So the other team's still getting an advantage if you're showing cynical play. I thought that was a very good rule, but the other ones I think it's just going to be too tough to implement, and you don't want. Well, obviously next summer in the league, you don't want to be players or going up or down divisions, probably more. You know what I mean? Just because maybe just a bad decision by a referee, and a footballer can make a bad call. It's just as well as a referee, and you don't want headlines to be about bad decision. You want headlines to be about what sort of score it was, how good of a game was. You don't want that all over the papers.
Yeah. Interesting stuff there from the two lads. It's clear that they hadn't engaged too much with that whole process of what the story is with these rules, how long they'll be in for, Because if this vote happens, they'll be in for the league and that's it. There'll be a review at the end of that, not for 5 years, as Stephen O'Brien was saying. And Drew Wylie was like, I didn't realise they were just in for the league and not the championship. I would have assumed that this is something that has been widely debated amongst the players, but it turns out they are too busy with their lives, training and playing football and getting on with stuff. And that's interesting, because you would have thought that maybe, I don't know whose job that is. Is that the GPA's job, or is it actually the GAA's job?
To what, inform the players?
Like, you know.
Okay, the one thing I think we can take from this is, you're bang on there. GAA players, especially intercounty players at the moment, are struggling to keep their head above water in terms of actually managing time to play for their county, potentially play for their college, whatever it may be, getting into physical shape for the start of the National League. They're not consuming the discourse around this. They're not really looking too much into the rules. They'll probably think about it once it's actually decided whether or not it's going to be in for the National League, which kind of comes back to this point. How much should, say, the GPA survey that's in the newspapers this morning actually be considered when it comes to the Rules Committee this Saturday? Of course it should be listened to, but should it be a real consideration? 90% of intercounty players don't want this hand-pass rule implemented. Well, clearly there's a good percentage of people that don't really know what it's all about, and I think we really do need to get to the other side of the National League, and it makes the climb down from the Rules Committee all the more spectacular that they've actually changed their mind on this, that they decided to not implement it automatically for the National League and reconsider and have the vote before the National League. I think they should have stuck by their guns and had that vote afterwards.
Yeah, but presumably that's just window dressing and this is just rubber stamp this weekend. If it's anything
no,
other than
but
that,
reading Carlo Kane this morning, it does seem that there's a realistic possibility that this thing doesn't get through on Saturday.
the whole thing, all of it,
The hand-passing rule.
just the hand pass.
Yes.
Okay, so everything else gets through.
By the sounds of things, yeah. Like the hand-pass rule is the one thing here that it's the most likely to not get through. I think in general, the rest of them will probably
Were there
stand
many?
the test.
Were there many matches in the league where you would have seen the defensive football that we saw in that Slot Neal game? I don't think so.
Well, that's a spectacular example, the Slot Neal game, I think.
Yeah, but that's like, I mean,
Like, for example, I don't think
league points are up for grabs. Ooh, things aren't going well for Shane Lowry. He's had a bogey on the second hole, so he's down to 9 under, and we're just seeing him drop now beside a footpath. This looks like it's on his third hole, so he's been wayward in the first 3 holes, and that's not great.
the thing about the defensive football is I'd be fairly confident in saying that Carlow, for example, would have been more offensive when they got promoted from Division 4 than they would have been in that terrible Leinster semi-final against Laois and Croke Park last summer. I would say the defensive football of, say, in terms of a defensive system that was very solid from a Galway perspective last year in the Football League, that was worked on throughout the Football League and then was implemented in the Championship. Of course, they weren't overly defensive, but there was certainly more of an edge and more numbers in a mass defence than there was in previous years. So it's kind of a bit of both, really. It is the weaker teams that are implementing more defensively in the summer than they are in the league, and it comes back to this. The old chestnut that if similar teams were playing similar standard matches against one another, then you'd
over
have
a period of
defensive
time.
football.
Yeah, well, and it wouldn't be an overnight fix because there would be loads of teams who still are stuck in the training sessions that they've been doing for 3 or 4 years, and they've decided that our identity is going to be defensive, and those teams will have mid-table mediocrity as their future forever. The teams who are like a bit more explosive and try and do stuff, eventually they will rise to the top. Their players will get better. Everybody will stick around. Oof. Shane Lowry.
That's not a good recovery shot.
From one side of the fairway to the other, pin high, but it's in deep rough on the left-hand side. So it's been a little bit of a start at Abu Dhabi this morning for Shane Lowry. We'll keep an eye on that for you on offtheball.com all day today. Did want to talk about the other part about the league. So we had somebody from Kerry, we had somebody from Monaghan. We didn't have somebody from Dublin at this launch. And we'd nobody from Dublin at the launch of Air Sports coverage this week either. And that's unusual. I think somebody said it's the first time in 27 years that there's been a launch and there hasn't been somebody from the defending champs at the launch.
Why not? Do we know why that it didn't go?
No.
Are they keeping their cards close to their chest? Was it a decision that they're not going to be putting the spotlight on this of all years? In case they do what they do at every single media event, and it is give away Jim Gavin's playbook.
Yeah.
They can't be trusted, those Dublin players, can they?
Who would be the Marcelo Bielsa of... well, Jimmy Guinness is basically the Marcelo Bielsa sending somebody up the tree down in Kerry that time, but like current acting Is there somebody trying to spy on the Dublin football training sessions?
Yes.
Hovering drones over?
Yes, definitely.
What would you learn? Dublin have loads of good footballers, strength and depth, move the ball quickly, have a basketball formation, have starter plays. The kick out's important. What would you learn specifically that you'd need to know? Yeah,
it's true. Very little.
That they've got a young cornerback who's very good. Howard's very good. Maybe Connolly's not in the team anymore because he said that Howard was good and that was like secret information that no one's supposed to know.
Well, the reason why Marcelo Bielsa spied on Derby County was to retain the first 11. He knew how they were going to set up. It's just helpful to get the personnel. So that's what you'd learn. Is Cian O'Sullivan playing as a sweeper? Where is Kieran Kilkenny actually playing? Are they going to play a 2-man full forward line, 3-man full forward line? What's going to happen here? So you definitely get those facts from watching a training session, but I think it's pretty clear how Dublin set up at this point in terms of tactics.
Why do you think they didn't put somebody forward for the launch?
I don't know. Honestly, I really do. They've got nothing to be afraid of. They've never once got bitten by a media event, like on behalf of a player. Sending a player forward has never bitten Dublin in the ass. I'm like this current Dublin team, obviously. I'm struggling to think of one. Can you think of the event where a Dublin player has actually said something that
is a hostage to fortune?
Yeah, like in terms of football, is remarkably interesting. Obviously, as individuals, when you get talking to them about themselves and their own careers and stuff they do outside of football, they are a remarkably interesting team. But when you get into the nuts and bolts of how did you win this game or what's your plan for this game, they are very well guarded, and that is totally understandable. You're not going to give away anything that's not necessarily that you shouldn't be giving away. So they're the best county in the country at not giving stuff away, and they seem to not want to go to an event.
Interesting comment piece on this from Mark Gallagher in the Mail this morning. He's got a few good lines about John Horan, the president of the GAA. In his speech to launch the league, Horan did reference the struggle Gaelic Games has to make their presence felt in a crowded media marketplace. I'd like to thank the media. I think you play a crucial part in it all. Nothing irritates me more than to pick up the papers and see all the stuff coming in from overseas in terms of other sports. Or if you go on the internet and all the stories are there, but we don't get in. And then Mark Gallagher makes the point that John Horan wouldn't speak to the media yesterday.
Oh my God!
Apparently, he didn't want to be seen to be intervening in the vote on the new rules on Saturday. Even though Mark Gallagher points out that it's actually the GAA president's job to. You get elected on the basis of steering policy through. So, you know, he could come out and say something today which would help steer that vote at the weekend. But he declined to do that. Apparently, he might be available next week. To talk about it. They did say, look, we just want to talk to you about the league, and he declined that opportunity. So he, in his term of office, Horan has done little to increase GAA's presence in the sports pages, says Mark Gallagher. His dealings with the media have been limited. He spoke to the press last September at the launch of the ESRI GPA report on demands on county players, back in July when the All-Ireland Championships were launched on the Aran Islands, but that briefing only came about after pressure from journalists who had travelled across to Inishmore. So no Dublin representative, and the president of the GAA not speaking to the media yesterday either, which is interesting. I mean, I'd say if you're Allianz, you're a bit pissed off about this. It's like, get out there and talk, lads. I want someone from Dublin up there. Maybe AIG are the sponsors of the Dublin Footballers and Allianz are a rival.
No, they've cleared that up.
Have they?
They've cleared that up. It's not a sponsor call from Dublin. That's where did I read that this morning? That's definitely on the records.
What's on the record?
That it was not a call from Dublin sponsors.
No, but Dublin could do it as a favour to their sponsors. That works two ways. Honestly, that works two ways.
Yeah, maybe.
So I don't have to ring up. I don't have to ring up if I'm the sponsor and say, here, don't go to that. But if I sign a deal with a big company that's like worth millions, I know I'm not going to thumb it in their faces.
Yeah.
There's a way that happens that isn't a formal request, because obviously that's not how things work. No one's going to send an email, here, what are you doing? Don't be going to that launch.
Yeah, it's true. Like, obviously the reaction would be, well...
But they didn't go to the air launch either, and that doesn't make any sense.
That's the thing. The thing here would be like, oh, poor media complaining about the lack of access, etc., etc., etc.
But I don't care.
It makes no odds. It's just complaining about the lack of
We're not
GAA
complaining.
coverage. No, I'm not talking about you. Just say, from a GAA perspective, if you work for the GAA and on the very day that the league champions aren't showing up, that you're complaining about the lack of GAA coverage, just seems a tad ill-timed. And maybe he was unaware that there was no Dublin players there, and maybe the timing of that game. I wasn't there. I don't want to I don't want to completely...
He must have known who was showing up. Of course he
should.
Yeah.
I'm sure he
did.
did.
Well, I'm pretty sure these things happen. He gives a speech at the front of the room. The assembled players are beside him, and then the players break up and do their interviews, like we just saw with Stephen. But like, obviously, if the best team in the country send a representative, there's going to be more coverage, because somebody will say something that is like, yeah, we're obviously not talking about the 5 in a row, or we are talking about the 5 in a row, and that just generates talking points, and that leads to coverage, and that's why you get more coverage. But in the meantime, I don't know, the number of GAA stories in the back of the paper.
Like, just to read out, just when you asked me, to be clear, when I said it was on the record, I actually just want to read out the passage that I was reading earlier on, because I found it here. Carlo Kane saying, "It is believed the decision was made by the Dublin management, although their reasons are unclear and a request for an interview wasn't returned. However, there is speculation that it is part of a media strategy aimed at keeping the Dublin players under the radar as hype around the 5 in a row builds. What is certain is that Dublin's decision not to send a player to yesterday's Allianz League launch at Croke Park has nothing to do with fellow insurance company AIG being the Dub's main sponsor. AIG's stance on the issue is that they would be happy to see their logo on a Dublin jersey all over media coverage of the launch of a rival company." So I think that clears that one up.
Also fair enough, yeah. All right, so the other thing that was obviously that we needed to talk about was whether or not the Dubs are going to play in Croker for 2 of the Super 8 games, and the notion that that was fair because that wasn't their home ground, and so they have to play their neutral game in Croke Park, and they have to play their Croke Park game, their home game in Croke Park and their neutral game in Croke Park, and it's just their home. Parnell Park is their home ground. What's your problem?
We were under a bit of time pressure there, so we couldn't chat to Darren about it afterwards. I'd like to hear his thoughts, because there was a sort of editorialising of the tone, saying that there was 50,000 people at one of Dublin's Super 8 games, which suggests to me, I could be wrong here, that they need to find now a 50,000 seater stadium, forgetting the fact that, of course, that was a double header in that first game of the Super 8. So I'm not sure what the attendances have to do with what actually happened last summer. Do you need to go and find a ground like the new Casement Park or Parky Queeve to actually house the Dubs?
Queeve, yeah.
Like, what is...
Couldn't the neutral game be played in Parky Queeve?
Like, it definitely could.
So the rule should be Dublin can't play 2 games in the county of Dublin. That should be it.
Yeah.
Like, that's all. Whereas this gymnastics that they're going through, I suspect, means this thing's going to fail, and we're going to have the same situation again this year, and that ruins the integrity of the Super 8.
Because it is ridiculous to say that Dublin are going to play their home game in Parky Queeve. That is just ridiculous, and that is what this move proposes.
Yeah, play the neutral game there.
Sorry, it doesn't propose that they play their home game in Parky Queeve, but they will need to look for a suitably big stadium. Realistically, that's Nolan Park or Portlaoise. Even that, like, it definitely has to be the
Gaelic grounds. They could play in Thurles. Like, they could play anywhere, right? There's loads of places that they could play. That you're going to get Clonus. I mean, Clonus. Yeah.
Well, as a neutral venue, that's perfectly fine. Like, I mean, Monaghan travelled down to Dublin to play in the neutral venue last year. Kerry travelled up to Croke Park to play in a neutral venue last year. Galway travelled over. So you can say to Dublin playing Parky Queeve for their neutral venue. There is absolutely no issue with that.
Yeah.
Just the semantics of saying
that's
that it's the home venue. It just seems that they're going about it just the wrong way. Shane
Lowry's had 2 bogeys in his first 3 holes, and has just found the meaty part of the green on the par 3 fourth. No chance of a birdie on that, I mean, barring a miracle putt. So shoulders a little bit slumped after a difficult start for Shane Lowry this morning.